All right, thank you. Next, I would like to have presenters come forward for our Gifted Education Advisory Committee annual update. As you know, each of the advisory committees reports annually once a year to our school board to update us and advise us on matters related to, in this case, gifted education, and to submit an annual report to the school board in regard to the implementation and review of our HCPS local gifted education plan. And I believe Mike Dussault is going to kick us off for that presentation, and we'll have the opportunity to hear from others, including members of our GIAC.
Good afternoon, Chairman Cooper, members of the board, and Dr. Cashwell. My name is Mike Dussault, and I'm the Director of Teaching, Learning, and Innovation. With me this afternoon is Mrs. Jenna Conley, Gifted Specialist, and Dr. Binford Weaver, GIAC Chair-elect of the Henrico Gifted Education Advisory Committee. Together, we will present the board with an overview of the GIAC 2021-22 annual report. On the slide before you, you will see the main focus of today's presentation. We'll start with an overview of the 2020-21 GIAC year, share the names of our officers and members-elect, unpack the GIAC plans for the 21-22 year, and wrap up the presentation with how our divisional 2021-26 Gifted Local Plan for Gifted Education will serve as the anchor to meet the goals outlined in Destination 2025. As a reminder, the partnership between the GIAC and the Division of Learning began with a direct plan to identify and address disproportionality of the gifted program demographics in Henrico. In order to accomplish this work, baseline metrics, feedback from staff, and a strategic plan of action were developed for our department. We are happy to report that this audit was actually completed 1 year earlier than the date identified in Destination 2025. In reviewing the results of the audit, a theme emerged: growing the pie. While at first glance this can seem overly simplistic, it is in fact the intentional approach to allow for more students to develop their talents, gain access to services, and create pathways to advanced academic coursework in the district. As we began a new school year, our Gifted Local Plan rooted in the culture of potential. It's important to remember that the Code of Virginia outlines the definition of gifted as the following. Gifted students means those students in public elementary, middle, and secondary schools, beginning with kindergarten through 12th grade, who demonstrate high levels of accomplishment or show the potential for higher levels of accomplishment when compared to others of the same age, experience, or environment. We are looking forward to sharing updates with the board and our community throughout the implementation of our Gifted Local Plan. For those of you who may not be familiar with the Gifted Education Advisory Committee, it is comprised of a group of dedicated parents, Henrico staff, community members, and students. Their main function is to examine, question, and advise gifted programs in Henrico to promote mutually beneficial relationships amongst our school board, schools, parents, and community. The officers and members-elect you see on the screen represent only those who are new to their 3-year term. Other magisterial districts are represented equally amongst the larger group, but are not shown on this slide. Altogether, 20 members representing all 5 magisterial districts participate in Henrico's Gifted Education Advisory Committee. Despite the multiple challenges created by the pandemic, the Gifted Education Advisory Committee satisfied quorum requirements to meet in person while allowing virtual participation as needed this past year. GIAC meetings took place in October, December, April, May, and June. Officers and members-elect were presented to the board via an update in June of 2021 and are being recommended for the board's approval today. Here on this slide, you will see the remaining members of the advisory committee. The GIAC currently has 1 vacant seat, which should be a parent or guardian wish to apply. Applications can be found on our district website. At this time, I'd like to introduce Dr. Binford Weaver, Chair-elect of the Gifted Education Council. As you can well imagine, this group of officers-elect have already worked tirelessly this past summer to ensure the GIAC is prepared to work hand in hand with our gifted department to ensure we reach our goals.
Good afternoon. I'm hoping that you can hear me okay. All right. Many of the GIAC members were new to our roles, as was Mrs. Conley, our gifted specialist. Many thanks to our former chair, Mr. Pierre Green, who helped us bridge the gap as our group developed a better understanding of our roles and responsibilities. Mrs. Conley navigated our current programming and services for gifted students, which helped the committee understand the groundwork that was being developed for moving the work forward. Let's take a look at what we focused on during the 2021 school year. The GIAC began the year with Mrs. Conley giving us an overview of current programming and services. Most of our meetings included follow-up discussions where we provided feedback to expand opportunities to understand the work at hand. Several GIAC officers and members were part of the equity audit interviews and gave input on the current state of gifted programming in Henrico. Members also had the opportunity to review the local plan for the education of the gifted and contribute to drafting the goals and objectives for the new draft of the local plan. Plan copies were provided to all members in the spring of 2021 to allow for feedback on the plan in place as gifted program staff worked to rewrite the plan. GIAC planning for the 21-22 school year took place this summer. Meetings for the upcoming year are scheduled around the county at various HCPS sites to allow for members and the community to participate in person if they choose. Meeting notices have been posted on the Gifted website, along with Microsoft Teams links and sites for all of these public meetings. Members of the GIAC were also present at Henrico's Back to School kickoff event in August and had the opportunity to partner with Mrs. Conley in connecting with our parents and guardians in the community to share more about gifted programming. As we head into a new school year, the GIAC has a number of recommendations we would like the board to consider to keep our important work moving forward. To better support the implementation of the district's new gifted local plan and meet the needs of our students, we are asking the board for the following: a full-time GYSA, or Gifted Young Scholars Academy, administrator to support and further develop the program. 2 additional gifted resource teachers to move the district closer to a 2-to-1 ratio for school support. 12 additional Maggie Walker Governor's School seats, 1 for each current middle school. To conclude our presentation, Mrs. Conley will now outline the opportunities where the GIAC will partner with the gifted department to lift the work of the local plan for this upcoming year. Thank you.
Good afternoon. As the GIAC moves forward into the 2021-22 school year, we plan to build our Gifted Education Advisory Committee meetings and discussion around strong communication and partnerships. Many structures that were researched, evaluated, and developed over the past school year have now moved into the implementation phase for 21-22. Gifted Education Advisory Committee meeting topics for the coming school year include, but are not limited to, those you see on the slide. These topics were identified through feedback and discussions with our officers-elect this summer. After months of gathering feedback, brainstorming, and strategic planning, the path forward for supporting gifted services and programming is now in place. On Friday, September 10th, the Gifted Department proudly presented the 2021-2026 local plan for the education of the gifted to the board via a weekly update. Mr. Dussault will now review some of the highlights contained within the new plan.
On this slide, while not an exhaustive list, we have captured some of the larger components of the gifted local plan that will begin this year. Number one, revisions were made to the gifted identification process to ensure equity, consistency, and best practice across Henrico County schools with regards to student observations and interviews. Two, the addition of gifted identification and screening tools designed to recognize strengths in students from various backgrounds, including economically disadvantaged, culturally diverse, identified with a disability, and multilingual students. Three, the targeted development of a K-1 instructional platform of research-based talent development response lessons to extend critical thinking, academic growth, with a focus on our underserved students. Four, implementation of a variety of professional learning opportunities built for gifted resource teachers, gifted cluster teaching, general education teachers in gifted pedagogy, characteristics of gifted learners, and gifted instructional models to meet the needs of all learners identified with potential. Five, and most importantly, a structured communication and engagement plan with parents and community members that strengthens the identification, enrichment, and academic support for our gifted and at potential students. It's important to note that while the local plan provides the roadmap for gifted services and programming for a county, it's our strategic plan where the systematic changes take place. Through the work of Teaching, Learning, and Innovation Department, Gifted Programs, and our GIAC, we have engaged in the evaluation of the identification process and are applying those recommendations to open doors for learners who show potential for advanced academic success. At this time, Ms. Conley, Dr. Weaver, and I will now take any questions or comments from the board.
Thank you so much, Mr. Dussault. I'm going to start with Mrs. Ogburn, then go to Ms. Kinsella.
Thank you. First of all, thank you for all your work on this. It is, it obviously shows y'all are working for, basically, as we've talked about before, the goal is to create as many opportunities for kids to have rigorous learning as is possible. And we're trying to take down any barriers that exist, finding them where we can, so that more kids can participate in these programs that we offer. But I'd like to go, if you don't mind, Mr. Dussault, to the ask. The ask page where you said the things that, keep going, the 3 things we need. Right there. Okay, so let's talk about this for just a minute. So a GISA administrator, we do not have one now. Who is overseeing GISA today?
So we have a combination. We have a part-time coordinator who really focuses on the instructional portion of the day and the professional learning throughout. We also have a Wilder administrator who, as part of her administrative duties, helps support GISA throughout the day.
And how many students do we have in GISA today that those folks are overseeing with all the other jobs that they have?
We have approximately 300, probably a little bit less, maybe like 285.
So what you're suggesting for the betterment of the program is a person dedicated to overseeing GISA specifically. That is their job. They're working with parents and the students for the, okay. So just want to get that out there. And two additional gifted resource teachers, I assume they would go into the pool that go into our schools now. And we've been asking for 2 for a long time. All right, but let's talk about the 12 additional Maggie Walker Governor School seats. As y'all know, I sit on the Maggie Walker Regional Board and is our board's rep to that board. We've been talking about this. We have been talking about admissions changes at Maggie Walker. We're looking at our admissions policy here in Henrico and looking at how we can make that more equitable. So where do you see the 12, I know the answer, but we need to get it out there. The 12 additional seats, how would we allocate those seats? Because that's the burning question now that this slide is out there.
So let me give you a very specific, vague answer. As we await the Maggie Walker Board to conclude their work and recommendations with regards to assessment, rubrics, and all those other things that I know they're discussing, we are envisioning right now that the 12 slots go to each individual middle school right now. And when we get a final determination from the board, we'll reevaluate it at that time.
And so just to update this board and the community, and it is public, it's been, we had our Maggie Walker meeting yesterday. The regional board at Maggie Walker is looking at changing the admissions policy there. It's pretty simple. It's changing the weighting of the rubric of the evaluation. They're talking about eliminating one specific assessment test that we got more information on that's about 10 points of the rubric, and moving those 10 points to be part of the writing sample that the students have to use. So it's a reshuffling of the points in the rubric, but also they see that as a barrier being removed for kids who are struggling with that. But we also adding some weight to the writing sample. Let's each school system, but it lets Maggie Walker evaluate the kids in real time. What are their strengths with writing, which is so important at Maggie Walker. But it's important to note that just because Maggie Walker might change their admissions standards, not standards, but the admissions rubric and the admissions process, Henrico and each of the 14 districts make up their own admissions process. So we are in the process of examining ours, which I think is going to be a topic of another day. But the suggestion of 12 additional seats, this is something I've brought up before, that we would like to have more slots available for more students. This would not replace what we're doing now, but this would include basically be 2 seats reserved at each middle school across the county, but this would be 12 additional seats. And so we would have, right now we have 180 students at Maggie Walker. We're talking about, at this point, we would have 192 slots. And we have confirmed that there is room, we can do that. And so we're excited, I am excited about this possibility of having more students across the county having a slot. And we're looking at now how we're gonna do that, how we're gonna implement it. But I think you're right, one step at a time. And we've got to get straight what Maggie Walker's doing, and we'll approve or not, or decide those admissions changes at our next regional board meeting. The other thing I wanted to ask you about is, wait 1 second, is when are we going to be talking about the Maggie Walker process in Henrico? Do you have a time frame at this point? I know you're looking at it, but do you have a time frame?
So yeah, as you mentioned earlier, as soon as we get that final word that everything is a done deal, we've got everything on the back end ready to go in terms of communications to our parents, from the application itself and some of the changes that I know we've outlined earlier this week for the board, so that you have a little bit of an update of some of the barriers that we were going to remove to hopefully increase the applicant pool. So we are ready to go on our end once we get some finalization from Maggie Walker.
Okay, so we don't have a date yet. We're just, it's a one step at a time process. But thank you for all your work on this, and I would echo our appreciation to Pierre Green. He's been on the GIAC for quite a while now and a chair for several years, and so, but we do appreciate all of the parents who agree to, and the teachers and staff members who agree to be on GIAC. We meet several times, I think it's 5 meetings a year that we have, and our administrators do this and our teachers that participate in GIAC, obviously it's above and beyond what they already do, which is a busy schedule. So, but thank you for all of this, and I appreciate the work.
Thank you so
Mr.
much, Ms.
Chair.
Ogburn. Ms. Kinsella?
Yes, I appreciate this update as well. Eliminating barriers and access and opportunity are something we've really been focusing on across the board in Henrico County Public Schools. My questions, the 285 students at the GISA and the position, the full-time coordinator, how is this commensurate with the complement perhaps at our other specialty centers, like a program within a building?
Yeah, so that information I do not have at this time. I would have to get that for you.
Okay, I'd be interested in knowing if 285 is commensurate with what other folks are managing when they ask for additional complement. And then the 2-to-1 ratio, with our 2 additional gifted resource teachers, will this eliminate shared staff? I know I have some elementary schools that actually share gifted staff.
I don't think that adding just 2 is going to eliminate that in any way, but what it does do, it does start to free up some that might be potentially sharing 3, and it also avails us to the ability, if we have increased numbers, of which we are hoping for, that we're able to staff that accordingly.
Okay, whereas some schools have, I mean, just so we're clear for those who may listen back, that some schools actually have a dedicated teacher to a dedicated gifted class throughout our schools, whereas some of our schools share a gifted teacher, right? 2 and 3 schools, is that my understanding as to what you just said?
I think you may be thinking our gifted resource teachers will have typically 2 to 3 schools.
Okay.
And then we do have some students participating in our zone center and school-based programs where they are in a class together all day.
Okay, thank you for just, providing additional detail to that was what I was trying to get to. But the next thing is the seats at Maggie Walker. 12 additional Maggie Walker Governor School seats. So is that 1 per middle school? And then I'm going to circle back and go, how are the seats going to be handled? Since 3 of our middle schools have IB programs in them, I'll take it. Are the IB applicants going to be associated with their original zone middle school? Or how is that going to work? Because I don't want zone students to be at a disadvantage because of the IB applicants in their schools.
Mrs. Kinsella, I'm going to take that one and just note that in this presentation, GIAC is making a staffing recommendation, which administration will consider. So Mr. Dussault certainly hears the recommendation. We as a board hear the recommendation. And this is actually something, as Mrs. Ogburn mentioned, staff have talked about when we think about increasing opportunity, particularly as it relates to rigorous programs. So certainly no specifics about how those slots would be allocated have been discussed fully for implementation at this point. I'd want to make the public aware of that, but simply do recognize, understand, and honor that GIAC has brought that forward as an ask for the administration and the board's consideration as we move into future budget cycles. And then should we be able to make that sort of a fiscal allocation, we would consider the plan. But to your point, absolutely, the 12 they've suggested here are meant to make sure that each middle school would receive one.
This is not the first time I brought it forward. I want to say I addressed this specific situation with Moody in particular the last time we discussed it, which may have been April, May, June timeframe. So I'm just circling back since I'm seeing this in front of us again.
Absolutely, and I think that these do go hand in hand. I know you've made prior recommendations related to taking a look, and I think many of it was during redistricting, and this has come up since then. So I understand this topic has surfaced a number of times where the team has been asked to look specifically at our current middle school IB programs, equity and access there, and the feeder patterns to make sure that we're striking a balance. And so the team has been working on that, and certainly anything related to the Maggie Walker seats would be part of that conversation, should we move forward with adding those.
And then lastly, was any kind of look back? I know we're going to highlight the K-1 identification and education process so that we can provide additional access and opportunity to more of our students of potential. Is there any look back being considered? Perhaps students that may have been missed? Or are we just talking about a point in time and going forward? Such that we probably have a lot of kids that, a lot of students that we may have missed. Just something for consideration, or has the committee considered it?
So that's a great question, and while the K-1 talent development lessons not only build teacher capacity and give our kids an opportunity to participate in some of those lessons, so to speak, the rating scales and our criteria, the way we have organized everything for identification this year, should be able to go back and hopefully catch some of those students. And again, with the professional learning that Mrs. Conley and the gifted resource teachers have developed this year is intentional in terms of what you should be or could be looking for a student with potential.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you
all I
so
have.
much, Ms. Kinsella. Ms. Shea?
Thank you, Reverend Cooper. So one of my questions actually overlapped with Ms. Kinsella, which was, how does having a separate administrator from GISA compare, for example, like the IB program at Moody? Do you know if they have a separate administrator?
Currently, if you're looking at our middle schools, they have part-time coordinators where they teach a portion of the day, and then they have coordinator duties the other half of the day.
Okay, so I think similar to what Ms. Kinsella was asking on how would adding an administrator for GISA kind of compare on how we do admin complement in other middle schools programs is something to look at. I got to talk with Ms. Conley and Mr. Dussault earlier this week about some of these points, so I'm not going to rehash them just for the sake of talking, but I'll say excited about some of the different screeners and identifiers for our students. When we looked at the equity index on the report last spring, it was our ESL students and our economically disadvantaged students that had the biggest disproportionality, and so I'm seeing some very specific steps y'all are taking to try to ameliorate that. And so I appreciate that. And then the other question I had, just looking at our new members coming in GIAC, because I know we'll be voting on that tonight. Are they zoned by where they live or what school they go to, or either?
It's where they live unless they're like an admin rep. Like we typically have it be based on your home address. Yes, for members.
Because two of my beloved constituents, I think, are listed for the three-chap district on the slide. So anyway, so I just wanted to clarify, and we can talk some after this if you want in between this and the meeting, if that's helpful.
Thank you, yes.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, that's it.
Thank you so much, Ms. Shea. Mrs. Atkins?
Thank you so much for your presentation. I'm also grateful for all of the effort for folks who are volunteering their time to help us move our education system forward. Our motto is the right to achieve with the support to succeed. That means a lot to me. It means a lot to our families, and I believe that all children from all economic and cultural backgrounds have the right to succeed. I also believe that every child can reach their potential when they've been exposed, when families know at the elementary level and are able to choose pathways that can help their children develop their potential. I think that, as we look at ways to make more equitable environments and opportunities, I'm grateful to see that we are expanding seats. I'm looking forward to learning more about how we bring exposure and awareness to areas that may not have been or received the same level of resources in the past. And so as you move forward in your work and as the committee moves forward in their work, prayerfully, it will be with an equity lens. It will take a look at history of gifted and what that word meant in the past and what it means right now and how we want to evolve and what that means for the future. The expansion of those seats are going to be expanded in areas that have the program. So in thinking about the areas that do not have it, what does that look like? What does that mean? And how do we get there? So again, grateful for your work. Looking forward to seeing things evolve as we believe that all children have potential. And it's a matter of exposing them and giving them the support that they need so that they can see it in themselves and that their family can choose the correct pathways for their future. So thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Ms. Atkins. Again, I just want to echo the sentiments of my peers in regards to the questions that were asked, as well as the statements that were made. Thank you again, Ms. Conley, Mr. Dussault, and Dr. Benford Weaver for you taking on this Herculean task of assisting us from a volunteer perspective, you as well as your fellow GAC members. Please send our sentiment to them. And Ms. Ogburn, thank you for championing our desire to increase access and equity in regards to our gifted. So thank you so much. Madam Superintendent.
And I'll say thank you once more. I know you've heard lots of gratitude from the board, and I share the same to our staff and to our gifted advisory for your tremendous efforts to continue to engage in this work, even through unusual circumstances for meeting and so on. We're just grateful for your service. Certainly hear your recommendations, and we'll take those under advisement as we work towards developing future budgets and programs. Thank you so very much.